Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Elise Carter walked down the narrow cobblestone street of Willow Creek, clumsily holding a bouquet of red and white roses for her shop. The cool late afternoon wind blew her brown locks around her face, and her thoughts were occupied with the urgent order she needed to deliver before closing time. Elise's life had never been easy. Orphaned since childhood, she lived with her mother, a strict and demanding woman who never missed an opportunity to remind her of her limits. Every day was a struggle, juggling her modest job at the flower shop with the sometimes cruel remarks of her family. Yet, despite all the difficulties, Elise possessed a radiant energy, a quiet strength, and a natural kindness that made her an instantly likable person. As she was about to cross the street, a man clumsily dressed in an old gray coat stumbled on the sidewalk and knocked into the bouquet she was carrying. The flowers flew everywhere, and Elise, horrified, rushed to catch them. The man, red with shame, knelt beside her. I'm sorry," he stammered, picking up the roses with surprisingly delicate hands. His deep brown eyes, filled with unexpected warmth, met Elise's. A shiver ran down her spine. "It's nothing," she replied, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "You could have crushed them completely." He smiled shyly, a smile that seemed to erase all arrogance from the world. "It would be a shame to destroy something so beautiful." There was something about his demeanor that captivated Elise, a rare humility, almost foreign in a city where everyone seemed preoccupied with appearances and success. Without knowing why, she felt an immediate connection, as if this simple incident had been planned by fate. Lucas Sterling, for that was his name, was actually much more than just a clumsy stranger. Beneath his modest exterior hid a discreet billionaire, heir to a colossal industrial empire. He lived this way to experience real life, far from the envious glances and false friends that his wealth naturally attracted. But for now, Elise didn't know that. All she perceived was his kindness, his honesty, and that strange sense of security he exuded. As they both stood up, the flowers now clustered in Elise's hands, a knowing smile appeared on their faces. A spark, imperceptible but intense, had just been born. This simple moment, banal for some, would change their lives forever. Elise didn't know it yet, but this first contact would be the starting point of an incredible story, where love, secrets, and destiny would intertwine to lead her to a world she would never have imagined. The day after their meeting, Elise couldn't stop thinking about Lucas. Every detail of the previous day came flooding back to her, his shy smile, his delicate hands that had carefully picked the flowers, and that deep gaze that seemed to read her without ever judging. She found herself smiling to herself as she prepared the store's orders. Lucas, for his part, hadn't stopped thinking about her either. Sitting in a small cafe near the park, he replayed the moment when their hands had brushed against each other as he picked the roses. He felt strangely connected to this young woman he had only just met. He was used to keeping his distance, but Elise awakened something in him he had never felt before, a mixture of admiration and a desire to protect her. A few days later, Lucas returned to the flower shop, pretending to want a bouquet for his mother. But as soon as Elise saw him, her cheeks flushed. "Hello, Lucas," she said shyly. "Hello, Elise. I hope I'm not disturbing you," he replied in his soft, sincere tone. "Not at all," she whispered, trying to hide her excitement. As the days passed, he became a regular visitor. He took the time to chat with her, to take an interest in her life and her dreams. He never talked about his work, or his fortune, and Elise never asked questions. All that mattered were the simple moments they shared, walks in the park, quiet coffees, and conversations that seemed to last for hours. One Saturday morning, while they were walking near the lake, Lucas took a notebook and pencil out of his pocket. "I draw sometimes," he explained, a little embarrassed. "It's relaxing." Elise watched him draw with fascination. Each pencil stroke seemed to capture something intangible, the sunlight on the water, the movement of the trees, even the sweetness of the moment. "It's magnificent," she said finally. "You have real talent." He smiled, slightly red. Thank you, but it's nothing compared to what I feel when I'm with you. Their hands brushed by chance, and this time, no words were necessary. The silence was enough to express what they both felt, a budding complicity, fragile but authentic. Elise was beginning to feel what many call love, but she still didn't know the extent of the surprises Lucas had in store for her. For him, every gesture, every smile, and every look wasn't just a sign of affection, it was a way to build genuine trust, before revealing the most precious secret of his life. Elise and Lucas had grown closer over the weeks. Each encounter strengthened their bond, and they seemed unable to go a day without talking. Yet, behind the smiles and pleasant moments, the reality of everyday life was beginning to creep in. Lucas continued to live his modest life, as if he were a simple employee. He took care of his shopping, his meals, and his bills with surprising prudence for someone who might be considered wealthy. One evening, while they were dining at a small restaurant in the neighborhood, Elise noticed that he was counting every penny. "You shouldn't worry about that," she said softly. "I can pay my share." Lucas shook his head with a sad smile. "It's not that. I just like knowing I can handle my own business." Elise didn't fully understand, but she appreciated his humility. She realized there was a quiet strength in him, a balance that he sometimes lacked in his own life. She admired his ability to remain humble and generous despite his outward appearances of simplicity. One afternoon, while they were walking in the park, Lucas stopped by a bench and handed her a small notebook. "I wrote something for you," he said shyly. Elise opened it curiously. Inside, simple but powerful words described their shared moments, the first meeting, the brush of hands, the laughter they shared as they picked up fallen flowers. Each word vibrated with emotion and sincerity. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes shining. "How can you feel all this about me?" Lucas took her hand in his. "Because you are you, Elise. Simple, real, and beautiful in a way no one else is." Despite this tenderness, Elise couldn't help but wonder why Lucas sometimes seemed so preoccupied with small things. Why did he refuse to talk about his past or his ambitions? She told herself he must have his reasons, but curiosity was beginning to grow within her. These small daily challenges, far from distancing them, brought them closer. Each difficulty, each moment of doubt, strengthened their mutual trust. Elise was beginning to realize that she had never felt such authenticity with someone before. And Lucas, while preserving his secret, savored every moment, knowing that the true test of their love would come later, when he would have to reveal who he really was. For now, their world was simple, discreet, and deeply sincere. A world where budding love was measured in everyday gestures, glances exchanged, and small gestures that spoke louder than words. As the weeks passed, Elise and Lucas's relationship grew stronger. Each day brought its share of little surprises, a coffee brought to work, a sweet note left on the counter at the flower shop, or simply a smile exchanged on a street corner. For Elise, these simple gestures had become essential, like a breath of happiness in her ordinary life. One Saturday evening, Lucas invited Elise for a walk by the lake, the one where they had once sat drawing and talking. The sky was tinged with orange and pink, the sun was slowly setting behind the trees, and a light breeze rustled the leaves. Everything seemed perfectly silent except for the gentle lapping of the water and their footsteps on the path. Lucas walked beside Elise, his palms slightly sweaty, his heart pounding. He had thought long and hard about this moment. He wanted her to understand how much she meant to him, how much she had transformed his life and awakened in him a desire for happiness he had never known. Arriving at a small wooden jetty, he stopped and beckoned Elise to join him. She sat down next to him, her eyes bright and curious. "Elise," he began, his voice a little shaky, "there's something I need to tell you." She turned her gaze to him, attentive. Her heart began to beat faster. Lucas took a deep breath and removed a small box from his pocket. When he opened it, a simple yet elegant ring gleamed in the last rays of the sun. "I know we haven't known each other long, but I also know that I never want to spend a single day of my life without you by my side." Elise stood there speechless, unable to speak. Her eyes filled with tears, her heart overwhelmed with emotion. Lucas slowly knelt down, holding the ring in his hands. "Elise Carter, will you marry me?" A mixture of surprise and happiness lit up her face. She felt her hands tremble as she took his. "Yes, yes, Lucas," she replied, her voice shaky but determined. Lucas's smile widened and he slipped the ring onto her finger. They stood there for a moment, silent, simply holding hands, absorbed in the warmth of their budding love. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the certainty of this unique and precious bond. This moment marked a turning point in their relationship. Elise didn't yet know that this marriage would plunge her into a world she had never imagined. A world where appearances could be deceptive, where secrets could turn a life upside down, and where love would have to face the ultimate truth, Lucas's hidden fortune. But for now, there was only this simple happiness, this silent promise that, no matter what came, they were destined to go through life together. After Lucas proposed, Elise was on cloud 9. Each day seemed brighter than the last. She spent her mornings at the flower shop, but her thoughts constantly wandered to their future wedding. She imagined a simple but charming ceremony, a small local church, a few close friends and family, and of course, flowers everywhere, in soft, romantic tones. Lucas, true to his apparent modesty, let her make the decisions. "I want it to be as you wish," he repeated whenever Elise expressed an idea. For him, the most important thing was that she feel happy and never feel overwhelmed by luxury or excess. Elise spent hours hand-drawing invitations, choosing bouquets, and preparing every detail. Even her neighborhood friends were involved, some offering help with the decorations, others with the music. Everything was orchestrated with love and simplicity. One afternoon, as she was choosing flowers for the wedding, Lucas accompanied her. He silently observed her gestures, the way she examined each petal, as if she could perceive their inner beauty. "You are incredibly attentive to every detail," he said softly. Elise smiled, a little embarrassed. "I want this day to be perfect, but most of all, I want it to be we. Not something grand or superficial. Just us." Lucas felt his heart clench. He admired her desire for simplicity and authenticity, and it made his secret even harder to keep. He knew he already had everything imaginable, sumptuous villas, luxury cars, and entire worlds at his fingertips. But he wanted Elise to love him for who he really was, not for what he owned. The preparations progressed, and despite their modesty, a tension was beginning to build. Elise sensed that something about Lucas remained mysterious, like a veil he refused to lift. She chose to ignore this feeling, preferring to focus on the joy of their future together. One evening, while they were putting away some floral decorations together, Lucas took Elise's hand and said with unusual gentleness, "No matter what the future holds, I want you to know that I will always love you, Elise. For everything you are." Elise, moved to tears, snuggled up to him. At that precise moment, she felt invincible. She thought she knew Lucas, thought she understood the life they were going to share, without suspecting that behind his simple gestures lay a richness and a secret that could upset their happiness at any moment. And yet, deep down, she had a feeling that this quiet, modest life was only the prelude to something much bigger. The big day had finally arrived. The spring sun bathed Willow Creek in a soft, golden light, illuminating every street and tree as if to celebrate Elise and Lucas's impending union. Elise woke early, her heart pounding. She slipped into her simple yet elegant white dress, with a light veil that caressed her shoulders. Every detail had been chosen by her, a bouquet of roses and peonies, a pastel ribbon, and flowers arranged throughout the small neighborhood church. Her mother, who was helping her get ready, kept repeating, "You look beautiful, but remember to be yourself." Elise smiled, moved, and took a deep breath. Today, she was going to marry the man she loved, the one who had seen her for who she truly was. Meanwhile, Lucas, dressed in a sober gray suit, waited at the entrance of the church. He observed each guest with measured calm, but his heart was in turmoil. He knew that this moment symbolized much more than their union. It was the beginning of a life in which he hoped his love and sincerity would be more important than anything else, and above all, he kept his secret well buried, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. The music began, soft and moving, and Elise made her entrance. All eyes turned to her, but Lucas saw only her radiant smile and the tears of happiness in her eyes. As they met at the altar, a respectful silence fell. "Elise," Lucas began, his voice slightly shaky but full of conviction. "From the first day I saw you, I knew you were special. You changed my life, and I promised to spend every day making you happy." Elise felt her tears roll down her cheeks. "Lucas, me too. I love you. More than anything." The priest spoke the sacramental words, and when they exchanged rings, a thrill of emotion ran through the church. The guests applauded, but for Elise and Lucas, the world seemed to shrink into their own universe, a world filled with promise, love, and tenderness. After the ceremony, they left the church in a shower of petals and smiles. Every gesture, every glance they exchanged was a silent declaration of their love. For Elise, this day symbolized the simplicity and beauty of true love. For Lucas, it was confirmation that he had found someone who loved him for who he was, not for what he possessed. Yet, deep down, an invisible tension persisted. Lucas's secret, his hidden wealth, was waiting for its moment to reveal itself. And even though today everything seemed perfect, Elise had no idea that her life would soon be turned upside down, that the world she knew would be transformed by the truth that was only waiting a moment to burst forth. But today, she just wanted to enjoy the moment, to walk hand in hand with the man she loved, to smile, to laugh and finally to feel completely happy. A few weeks after the wedding, Lucas suggested Elise take a honeymoon in New York. She thought it was simply a trip to enjoy the city and relax after the wedding preparations. They took an early morning flight, and the American capital unfolded before them in all its grandeur and hustle and bustle. Upon their arrival, Lucas took her to a seemingly discreet hotel. But when they entered the suite, Elise was captivated. The room was vast and luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of Manhattan. Refined furniture, original artwork, and fresh flowers scattered throughout transformed the suite into a haven of splendor. "Lucas, it's magnificent," Elise stammered, her eyes wide. She felt both amazed and lost, unable to understand how he could have lived in such apparent simplicity when he owned such a world. Lucas smiled softly. "I wanted you to see the real life I lead, but only when we're alone." Intrigued, Elise followed Lucas through the apartment, discovering an impressive collection of luxury cars parked in a private garage, carefully organized bank accounts and investments, and even an office where colossal industrial projects were being planned. Her breath caught. Everything she thought she knew about Lucas had just collapsed. "Lucas, why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you let me believe we lived a modest life?" He took her hands in his, looking at her with an intensity she'd never seen. "Because I wanted you to love me first for who I am, not for what I have. I wanted your heart to choose mine, not my fortune." Elise felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and confusion. Her mind was foggy, everything she'd imagined about their life together seemed unreal. And yet, seeing the sincerity in Lucas's eyes, she understood that he'd never meant to hurt her. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I love you, but I feel betrayed." Lucas held her close. "Take all the time you need. I'll never ask you to love me for my money. I just want you to be yourself, the one I chose because you're perfect in my eyes." The shock of the discovery was intense, but little by little, Elise felt the anger dissipate, replaced by understanding. She realized that their love, even in the face of this revelation, could survive. She saw now that this secret was not a deception, but a protection, a silent test of their true love. That evening, facing the twinkling lights of the city, Elise took a step toward Lucas, squeezing his hand tightly. "Okay. I trust you. And I want to stay with you." Lucas smiled, relieved, and kissed her gently. In that moment of truth and vulnerability, they both understood that their bond was stronger than money, appearances, and secrets. But Elise knew this revelation was only the beginning. Their love would now have to navigate a world where wealth, power, and outside expectations would test their relationship. The day after the revelation, Elise woke with a strange mixture of confusion and excitement. The luxurious New York suite seemed unreal, and every object around her reminded her of Lucas's hidden wealth. She got up slowly, thinking about what to tell him. She loved Lucas deeply, but a part of her felt betrayed. When he entered the room, she was sitting on the bed, her hands clasped, staring out the window. Lucas immediately sensed that she needed to talk. "Elise," he said softly. "I know this is all a lot to take in." She turned around, her eyes shining with emotion. "Lucas, why didn't you tell me? This whole life, you've been hiding it from someone you love." Lucas sat down next to her, taking her hands in his. "Because I wanted you to love me for me. Not for my wealth. I wanted to make sure your heart chose mine, not what I own." Elise took a deep breath. "I understand, but I feel like I've been living in an illusion. Everything we shared, was it real, or were you pretending to live modestly to deceive me?" Lucas shook his head emphatically. "No, Elise. Everything we experienced was real. Every smile, every walk, every moment spent with you, it was true. I simply wanted to protect our love from the greed and false affection that money attracts." A silence fell. Elise looked around, her eyes taking in the artwork, the lavish furniture, and the cars in the garage. Everything was dazzling, but what mattered most was the sincerity in Lucas's eyes. "So, you didn't want to lie to me to manipulate me?" she asked, her voice softer. "Never," he replied firmly. "My only goal was to truly know you, Elise. And now that you know, I want you to remain yourself, free to choose our life together, with all its riches but also with its authenticity." Elise felt her tears fall, not from anger, but from emotion. She understood that what she felt for him was true and that no amount of money could alter that bond. She rested her head on his shoulder. "Okay. I want to try. I want to stay with you, Lucas. Even with all this." Lucas kissed her gently, a gesture full of promise and tenderness. In that moment of vulnerability and truth, they understood that their love had survived the most difficult test, the confrontation with reality and secrecy. This chapter in their lives marked a turning point. Elise now had to adapt to a world of luxury and privilege, learning to navigate her simplicity and Lucas's wealth, while remaining true to herself. She knew the real challenge was only just beginning, how to live out their love on a daily basis in a world where appearances and external expectations could threaten their happiness. But for now, they remained together, united by a love that had survived the truth, ready to face the trials to come. The weeks following the revelation of Lucas's wealth were a whirlwind for Elise. Every day, she discovered aspects of her new life she never would have imagined: lavish apartments in Manhattan, classic cars in private garages, private parties with free-flowing champagne, and invitations to events most people would never see. Yet despite this impressive luxury, Elise insisted on remaining herself. She continued to wear simple clothes, tend to the flower shop when she could, and maintain her modest habits. Lucas encouraged her, admiring her authenticity and her ability to remain true to herself in a world that would have overwhelmed many. One afternoon, they visited one of Lucas's second homes, a sumptuous villa on the hills above the city. The rooms were spacious, adorned with artwork and antique furniture, but Elise noticed the garden first. A small, peaceful space with multicolored flowers and fruit trees that reminded her of her flower shop. "It's incredible," she murmured. "But you've created a corner here that looks like me." Lucas smiled. "Because I want you to feel at home, wherever we go. This world can be huge and intimidating, but as long as you stay true to yourself, it will always be yours, too." As the days passed, Elise learned to navigate this new world. She met Lucas's staff, people who were both respectful and fascinated by her simplicity. She discovered that her own authenticity naturally attracted those around her, even in a world where many were accustomed to appearance and social status. Yet this adjustment was not without challenges. Some of Lucas's close friends tried to test her sincerity, hoping to discover if she was only in it for his money. Others, friends and colleagues, were intrigued by this young woman who dared to remain true to herself in such luxurious surroundings. But Elise quickly learned to cope with it, with tact and confidence, proving that her love for Lucas was genuine and that she was not interested in his fortune. One night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the illuminated city, Lucas took Elise's hand. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "You haven't changed for this world. You've remained yourself. And that's why I love you even more." Elise smiled, feeling a deep warmth fill her heart. "I love you too, Lucas. And I want us to be happy together, no matter what." At that moment, they understood that true love did not lie in luxury, travel, or possessions, but in sincerity, trust, and the ability to adapt together to life's changes. Despite the challenges, Elise and Lucas felt closer than ever. Their bond grew stronger every day, and Elise now knew she could not only love Lucas for who he was, but also navigate with him in a world where riches and secrets could sometimes test even the strongest relationships. As Elise gradually adjusted to Lucas's luxurious lifestyle, she quickly realized that wealth came not only with comfort, but also with outside judgment and expectations. Lucas's friends and family, accustomed to dealing with influential and sometimes opportunistic people, watched Elise's every move closely. Some doubted her sincerity, believing she was only attracted to money. One evening, at a private reception at one of Lucas's residences, Elise immediately sensed the tension. Guests whispered quietly, casting curious and sometimes contemptuous glances. She stood next to Lucas, trying to smile despite the discomfort that was growing inside her. "Ignore them," Lucas whispered, sensing her discomfort. "They don't know your heart. But I do. And that's all that matters." Elise took a deep breath and forced herself to answer confidently. When a guest dared to ask her, in a condescending tone, "So, Elise, are you really here for love, or to enjoy this world?" she looked up and replied calmly. "I'm here because I love Lucas Sterling. And I've never needed anything else to be happy." Silence followed her response. Some were surprised by her frankness, others impressed by her courage. Lucas, touched by his wife's dignity and confidence, placed his hand on hers, as if to show her his full support. In the following weeks, Elise faced other challenges: subtle criticism of the couple from the local press, rumors about her alleged interest in Lucas's fortune, and even attempts at manipulation from some of her relatives who wanted to test her sincerity. But each time, she remained true to herself. Her kindness, sincerity, and ability to remain simple in this world of luxury began to earn the respect of those around her. One afternoon, Lucas found her in the garden of their main villa, tending the flowers, as if the luxury around her didn't exist. "You see, Elise," he said, smiling, "everyone is starting to understand. They realize that your love for me is true and that you are exactly the person I was looking for." Elise smiled back, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. "It's not easy, but I want you to know that I will always be myself. No matter the criticism, the stares, or the rumors." Lucas hugged her. "And that's why I love you. You've shown that true love can survive anything." That day, Elise realized that her greatest victory wasn't adapting to luxury, but proving that true love could withstand external judgment and social challenges. She now knew that, despite the obstacles, she and Lucas had built a strong relationship, capable of overcoming any challenges life would throw their way. As the months passed, Elise and Lucas found their rhythm in this world where richness and authenticity coexisted. Elise had learned to navigate social obligations and the simple moments she cherished, and Lucas admired every day his wife's ability to remain herself despite adversity. They had transformed their life as a couple into a perfect balance: intimate dinners in their residences, walks in the park where they had met, and trips to extraordinary places, but always with the simplicity and sincerity that characterized them. One evening, on the balcony of their main apartment, overlooking the twinkling lights of New York, Elise leaned against Lucas. "You know, I never imagined my life would be like this," she whispered, gazing lost in the city lights. Lucas hugged her. "And I never thought I'd find someone like you, someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I have." They laughed softly, sharing this moment of complicity and tenderness. For them, wealth was no longer a barrier, but a tool to create memories, share experiences, and realize their dreams together. Elise had also earned the respect and admiration of Lucas's loved ones, proving through her actions and sincerity that her love was pure and selfless. Rumors and judgments had been replaced by admiration and gratitude. One spring morning, as they strolled through the park where it all began, Lucas stopped and looked at Elise tenderly. "No matter what the future holds," he said, "I know we can face anything, as long as we're together." Elise smiled, her heart light and filled with love. "Yes, together, we can face anything." Their hands clasped, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop around them. No money, no luxuries, no outside judgments, just them, their love, and the certainty that the bond they had built, despite secrets, trials, and revelations, was indestructible. Thus, Elise and Lucas discovered that true happiness lay not in material possessions, but in sincerity, trust, and the ability to remain true to themselves while sharing their lives. Their story became an example of authentic and lasting love, proving that even in the most complex and rich worlds, simplicity and truth are the foundations of true happiness. And as the sun set behind the skyscrapers of New York, Elise and Lucas walked hand in hand, ready to write the next chapters of their lives together, strong in the love that had survived all secrets and all trials.